Good morning, good morning. Hope we're all well. As you can see, in desperate need of the barbers reopening this weekend. So what we're going to look at is there's big weeks this week. So in the next 7 days or so, two big speeches and big announcements that we're looking forward to. So there's two main things that are going to impact the UK economy. The first is going to be unemployment. Unemployment is one of the biggest risks to the UK economy at the moment. The economy is driven on growth, it's driven on spending, and all of that comes through employment. Because when an economy is doing well, so if you think even 18 months ago, we were at a position with the lowest levels of unemployment in 40 years and the highest salaries in a decade. How you doing, Nick? How you doing, Jatinder? So we're in a really good position. What happens when employment is high? So when employment's high and lots of people have jobs, the demand for employees goes up, the supply goes down, and the price goes up. That's basically how the price mechanism of economics works. So demand for employees goes up, supply goes down, the price increases. So what happens there is when the employment rate's going up, more people have jobs, salaries go up, people have more money to spend, people spend more money, businesses can then grow because people are spending more money in the shops. Businesses grow, create more jobs, reduce the supply, increase the demand, drive up the prices, and that's how one of the key elements of how an economy works. What happens when we end up in a position like this where unemployment starts to increase, so employment levels go down, is exactly the same. So when people lose their jobs, household income comes down, income comes down, affordability comes down, and people have less money to spend, so they spend less money, businesses make less revenue, they then have to lay off more people go unemployed, less money to spend, businesses contract, the economy contracts, and it impacts on the economy. So there's two things for the economy. So one is unemployment and the rate of employment, and the second is government stimulus, because when the air starts to come out of the balloon economically and the economy starts to contract and people start to lose their jobs, what happens is the government have to step in, because in a boom time or a mature market, the government can tax people. They'll tax people, they can generate their money from there, they can put compliance in place, regulation. As unemployment starts to go up and the economy starts to contract, the air comes out of the balloon, the government have to do whatever they can to stimulate the economy. So they have to get the economy going again, they have to make finance available, they'll put stimulus in place, because they want entrepreneurs specifically and SMEs to grow, and they want them to create more jobs, and they want them to expand, and they want them to get the economy going. Now, you can only do that in an active market unless there's some artificial stimulus, not a million miles away from like steroids. So steroids obviously can help you to grow quicker than you normally would, or they can help you to reach an artificial level of growth. A stimulus is exactly the same. So the government will be putting in stimulus into the economy, because at the moment it's contracting, it's going to go into a downward spiral. Unemployment rates, if you think we were like 4% unemployment before coronavirus, and the initial forecasts were that we might reach 10%, which would be ridiculously high. If you think about the last recession, the GFC, global financial crisis, unemployment at that rate, unemployment during that time, when it peaked at about 7%. We were saying this is really bad and it could go as high as 10%. The forecasts now are that we could go anywhere. Look, 10% is very realistic, depending on how quickly hospitality and retail reopens, and what scarring's caused, what economies go out of business, how many more commercial businesses fail, how many more shopping centres and shops start to go down. It's very realistic that we could hit 10% unemployment now, potentially go up to 14%. Now that is not only the worst recession in 300 years, that is the highest level of unemployment on record since records began. And that's not good for the economy. So, Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, Prime Minister, Chancellor of the Exchequer, two big hitters leading the way, and what we're going to see now is we know we've got a vision of what's potentially going to happen with unemployment. It's going to increase, people are going to lose their jobs, affordability will go down, people have to sell their houses, disposable income will go down, people will stop spending, salaries, average earnings will go down, salaries will go down because the demand and supply mechanism will shift, and So unemployment's going to increase. It's not looking good. The second part is the stimulus. So it's like, right, well, the government have got to step in now because we're in recession, and they've got two options. They leave us in recession, we progress into a depression. We end up with all sorts of economic, social, health issues. Nobody's going to see that. We are a capitalist economy. We are still a very key player in the international markets, regardless of what happens with Brexit, which now has a hard deadline of the end of August. And Boris has quite explicitly said if we can't get a deal by the end of August, that's it. We'll just have a hard exit. 6 months ago, 12 months ago, that would have been a big deal. It's just another bump in the road or a fly in the ointment at the minute. Plus chuck in the international conflicts with obviously China and things like that, and there's a lot of stuff going on. Anyway, two big speeches this week. Tonight we have Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson's going to be stepping up and sharing his level up strategy, which he's going to use to expand the economy. Now, this isn't a million miles away from probably the Conservative manifesto, where they said that they were going to invest heavily in infrastructure. But it's probably going to be fast tracked. So it's 100 billion. So it's likely to be a £100 billion investment scheme over the next 10 years. There's going to be investments in prisons, schools. There's going to be 40 new hospitals, I think it is. We don't know exactly. Obviously, we'll hear this tonight. And what this is basically is it's a stimulus into the economy to create, driven by public sector spending, which is going to create jobs, and it's going to create, obviously, it's going to create jobs, and it's going to create activity in the construction sector. All of the supply chains that are associated with that industry, it's going to stimulate those. So it creates jobs, it creates spending, it pumps money in. The government have got two options with stimulus. They can either use, they've got to pump QE it. Well, most of it will come from QE, quantitative easing. We're up to about 700 billion QE at the minute. That needs to be reversed at some point. But the government will pump QE down from the central bank into central government. And then the government have got two options. One is they burn through the rate, they burn through the capital, have a monthly burn rate, annual burn rate, throws us into more of a deficit, which we were doing a reasonable job of coming out of as an economy, but we've still not got a handle on it. They can burn that money, so they stimulate it with quantitative easing, pump money in, got to keep an eye on inflation, but they can either burn through it and just get rid of all of the, they can just burn through it and waste it, and it is just in the same way as if you've ever expanded companies before and done a forward funding strategy, you've got a burn rate. The government can have a burn rate, or they can invest, so they can spend it. And there is some clauses in the policies they're allowed to adopt about what ratio they can use for basically spending, like universal credit grants, other initiatives that are there at the minute, and what has to be invested. What we're going to see is a big drive from Boris tonight about this level up strategy, Project Speed, they're calling it. They've got a new team, they've got a new committee together to run it, and it's being chaired by Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak is, in recent years, my number one favourite economist. Well, I was going to say favourite member of Parliament. He's definitely he's up there. He's sharp and savvy on business. He knows economics inside out. I think he's done a fantastic job through this period. He's only 40 years old. He turned 40 last month. I think he's doing incredibly well for that, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets teed up for Prime Minister at some point in the future, but we'll see. Boris is going to do his speech tonight, which is going to be basically like your leadership speech, your state of address. He's going to stand up and say, this is what we're doing. We're going to get Britain back to business. We're going to invest in public sector funding. And he's going to create lots of jobs in the public sector through infrastructure mainly. And that's going to be primarily in the Midlands and the North, where we've seen lots of impact. So there's going to be that. There's also going to be, when we're talking about what's going to happen to your jobs, there'll be investment in some challenge sectors to keep them going, to drive them forward. There'll be some businesses that are repositioned. So, for example, retail and the high street will probably not come back to this. And I've said that right since the beginning. And we've already seen some of the 𝐼𝐶𝐴 group go down. We've seen pre-pack administrations going on the last couple of weeks. There's lots of change in that space because the business model basically is fundamentally flawed. If you look at how the commercial space works, both with the commercial space, value of assets, leases, it's a very mature asset class, which means it's backed by pension funds and investment funds. Even there is some banks mixed in there, but it's a very mature asset class, and it needs to probably. The whole thing needs restructuring really. So we're going to see that. So those sectors probably won't be poured with money to rescue them. They'll be restructured and repositioned in some capacity. Other jobs, so there's going to be a generation. 18 to 25-year-olds are going to be the hardest hit in this. So if you've got partners, wives, husbands, boyfriends, girlfriends, cousins who are in that range, 18 to 25, that sector is going to be one of the hardest hit through contractions in retail, contractions in graduate jobs, contractions in hospitality. That's the sector that's going to be hardest hit. One of the initiatives the government are going to come out with, I suspect, and this was initially rejected, which is interesting, but it has seemed to have been tabled again in the last 5 days. Boris Johnson was put under pressure by, I can't remember exactly who it was, to guarantee apprenticeships, to say that coming out of this, people who can't go to university, can't get jobs, will you guarantee them apprenticeships? And initially, him and Rishi both said they couldn't commit to that. However, they are putting a scheme together, I believe, and we'll probably hear about it tonight, that 18 to 25-year-olds who've been out of work for a year will be guaranteed a reskilling, will be guaranteed an apprenticeship, and I suspect it will be within a reskilling initiative. Like, some of this stimulus with regards to jobs will be that our economy is driven used to be manufacturing, it's driven very heavily now by finance. We're a big finance sector, service sector, and also, which a lot of people don't know, is tech. If you look at like international foreign investment over recent years, we've received a lot of investment in tech, and we've got that as an emerging economy. What I think you're going to see is, if it comes true that this, and it's quite likely, it makes sense, the commercial space, hospitality, pubs, restaurants, they're going to get hit in some capacity, to go through a degree of downsizing. You've also then got the next generations coming in that backpiling the demand, or the supply rather, for people who want jobs. They're going to need somewhere to go. So what you're probably going to see is, in some capacity, some retooling, reskilling of our workforce. And I wouldn't be surprised if that goes towards either, and this is just me guessing, towards either manufacturing. And if we're going to start to compete with international markets, it will have to be, it's questionable how effectively we can do that without causing some inflationary pressures. However, we do have a good track record of high-end manufacturing. So obviously we still have, although they've already sliced off like 8,000 jobs through this, we do have some worldwide high-end manufacturing companies like Rolls-Royce, Tata Steel, like maybe, but there's going to be some challenges there, because that's gone through two acquisitions now and still doesn't seem to be able to hold its own. It's more of a trophy piece. I've not been close enough to it, but I've seen it change hands over the last couple of years. We'll have to see how competitively we do that, but there'll be some reskilling, and then also into tech. I think we're going to see a lot more tech investment come in, because obviously tech is the way we're going, whether it's prop tech or fintech or AI, whatever. That's obviously a huge wave that continues to grow. And if we're looking for something to back economically to get this real new spike to take us through this, the government are doing a long-term growth strategy. So it's not a quick fix. It's not put your finger over the boat and, you know, hope the water doesn't come in. It's completely rebuilding the ship. And some areas like retail, hospitality, they've just grown on. They've just become overvalued in some capacities. They've been backed. Asset classes go through a curve. You've obviously got like the introduction curve, the growth curve, maturity curve, saturation, and then decline. When they get up into that maturity class, where it's a very stable asset class, like commercial's been there for a few years, and PBSA is another one to watch. So PBSA has come through that entrepreneurial curve and that growth curve, and it's now at a point where it's a very mature asset class. So funds will get in on like a 5 to 6, or maybe even lower, like 5-6% yield, ideally with a lease in place. Build to rent's a little bit further behind it, but they're very mature, developed asset classes. They run the risk of becoming not zombie businesses, but becoming very developed, very slow, less lucrative, and the margins just get compressed over time because they lack that innovation that you get on the entrepreneur's curve. And I think some of the industries like hospitality and commercial and retail and shopping centres and the high street, they're right at the end of that curve. So we're not going to be investing aggressively with this stimulus package to bring them back, maybe to reposition it, and the government will get out of the way. They'll they'll reform the planning. They're looking at centralising some of the planning process, putting a fast track model in place so you can get applications through quicker, which reduces the risks for like developers like us. So yeah, lots of things going on there, and we'll be reskilling people into new industries, or at least industries that are growing rather than slowing. And that would quite likely be, I mean, there'll be public sector in the short term to stimulate the economy and get things going, but then that'll move into things like, well, the things I mentioned: high-end manufacturing, finance, service economy, emerging tech development, R&D, that sort of things. So yeah, it's very interesting. So what is going to happen with your jobs? You know, what's going to happen with the jobs of your partners, your wife, your children, your cousins, your friends, your family? The reality is, some economies are going to be hit, some sectors are going to be hit pretty hard, whereas others are going to continue to grow. And what we're going to see over the next 7 days, we've got Boris's speech tonight, and he's going to announce a big investment in public sector spending. I suspect some sort of retooling to reskill our workforces, guaranteed apprenticeships for the youngest generations that have been harder hit. And yeah, he'll do his sort of statement of address and let us know what's going on from a leadership standpoint. And then Rishi will be stepping up next week. Rishi Sunak, Chancellor of the Exchequer, will be stepping up next week, and he'll be putting the meat on the bones. He'll be saying, right, this is the budgets that are being made available. These are the schemes that we're currently drafting. These are the things we're developing, and that's our stimulus package. That's what you want to be looking for, because I know I keep banging the drum about this gold rush. The further and further we get into it, this is all very, very real. And I've been an entrepreneur all my life. I've built businesses through boom times. I've built businesses through bust times. And without a doubt, it's always easier, quicker, sometimes a bit more fun in more compressed markets, in challenging environments, because there's less activity, there's less competition, there's less confidence. Whereas as an entrepreneur, you thrive on those sort of things, on that survival mode and getting things started. So that's good. But to be in an environment now with the level of recession we've got, the high impact of unemployment that's going to go potentially off the charts, not only are we leading the way, but the government are going to be our cheerleaders. The government are going to be making finance readily available, going to be reducing compliance and regulation, putting grants in place, initiatives, national insurance holidays, VAT reductions, corporation tax reductions, HMRC deferments, anything they can to make us go to work and make us scale our businesses and make us create jobs and make us grow our business, because the economy relies on spending and growth. That's it. Like, for a booming economy, you need to be growing. For a busting economy, it needs to be slowing, and we're definitely slowing at the minute, and they need to get that flywheel going. Anyway, on the basis of how many of you are still online, hopefully economics seems to be something that everyone's interested in at the minute. Success and failure through this, honestly, are like very, very predictable. We've been here before, we'll be here again. We're going to go through the dusk, and then into the through the dusk and into the dawn and the dials. And the model is so predictable, but it will be a game, a first mover advantage. Those who make it now will make it big, and speed of implementation is going to be absolutely key here. So yeah, if you're into property, into business, join us in the Property Entrepreneurs Facebook community. So go on Facebook, the Property Entrepreneurs community. It is like membership only, it's free, but you do have to answer 3 questions to get in there. Come join us in there for lots of videos and information on what's going on. And if you're not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, go to Property Entrepreneur channel on YouTube for more business and economics. So I wish you all the best of luck. A couple of big announcements tonight, another one next week, and look forward to sharing the journey with you. Have a great day. Take care.